Welcome back for another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about that tendency for leaders to feel as if they have to have the final word. And sometimes I think that comes from pressure, feeling as if the success of a leader is based on whether or not they are giving the team clarity at all times, whether or not they feel that they're being efficient and getting results quickly. Whatever that pressure might be, sometimes it may make a leader feel like they have to have the last word. So today's episode is to really unpack that and talk about why strong leaders don't need to have the last word and how actually that's detrimental to the success of the team. There are times when it's appropriate for the leader to have the last word and final say in a discussion and determine the direction. And we're going to talk about that today. But then there are other times where it's actually going to create bigger problems for the team. So I know that something that I have admittedly struggled with, couple things here. One being self-regulation. So my emotional intelligence is pretty high, but the self-regulation piece isn't always there. And I joke around and say that, it's because I choose not to control it. But honestly, I think sometimes I get tied up in efficiency. I have to feel like we're moving forward quickly, and we can see results very quickly. So I try to jump immediately to how you can take action, what we need to do, and maybe don't slow down to listen to all the ideas or ask opinions. I am just very focused on, my vision and how I want to get there. Well, if you've been listening to past episodes or are familiar with DISC, I've kind of talked about that being a high D behavior, that a D has a vision for what they're looking for. They want results and want results quickly. So they might just be directive and say, this is what I need you to do, and might get really good at delegating, or might delegate not so effectively because they don't slow down to give appropriate expectations and share what someone needs to be successful. But this is where I feel like I have run into the issue of feeling like I have to have the last word because I want to be efficient. So I know that it sometimes can be that specifically, and others, maybe it's the belief that strong leaders need to be decisive. They need to be clear and have the final word. But really what I want to talk about today is that some of the strongest leadership shows restraint, not really reaction. And so that restraint is what I was talking about with the self-regulation that I struggle with sometimes, because even though I think I know what I want and I think I have a clear direction and I could communicate it very quickly, restraint would actually be a better strategy in most cases. So leadership strength isn't something that's really measured by how often you speak or how loudly you speak, but really by how intentionally you choose when to. And that's what I want you to be considering as I go through this today is, how can I be more intentional about when I choose to speak? And hopefully I can guide you through some of that in the episode. So really, I want to honestly point out that this is a common belief. Anytime that I'm talking to a group of leaders, especially when it comes to DISC, they will bring up concerns that they are not able to lead effectively because they're not direct and they don't always have an answer right away, and it takes them time. So the responsibility that a leader has, that pressure that's created to provide that certainty, can really drive this behavior that is creating problems for their team. And a lot of times early on in someone's leadership, they're often rewarded for having responses quickly, having a solution right away and being able to take action. So between being rewarded for the behavior early on in their leadership journey and wanting to be helpful and efficient, then it can feel risky to hold back ideas and not share that value right away and show what you can bring to the table. So I want to kind of talk through a couple of pieces here. What does having the last word actually do to the others in the room? Well, this actually came up recently for a client of mine, someone who is direct like I am, wants efficiency, wants results quickly, and was seeing that that was not working for the team. And I will bring this up when I'm talking about leadership in the wild in a little bit, because I ended up choosing this individual to highlight for this week's episode. But what you can see happening over time is that, because even if this individual comes in and doesn't immediately state what they want, if they're used to the person always having the last word and having the final say, it almost feels a little bit like a performance. Like, I'm trying to make you feel like you have a say in this, but really, no matter how long we sit here and talk about it, I'm just going to tell you what to do anyway. So what is that going to do to the team? So if I were on that team, I would say, well, what's the use? Why am I going to share my ideas? Because this person already knows what they want anyway. We're going to end up doing what they tell us to do. So why am I going to waste my breath? Why should we waste the time? Just tell me what to do. So it's creating this dependency on the person, the leader, to always tell the team what to do, while the leader is frustrated with the team because they feel the team is dependent on them, and they're like, why can't you ever make decisions on your own, and you're not moving quickly enough? So it's just this constant back and forth where one side's frustrated with the other. So then, as I said, team members are going to stop offering up ideas. They're getting the message that what they have to say is not valued, it's not important. And also, even if the leader doesn't have the final word, if they're never slowing down enough to let the quiet voices speak up, the people that need longer, those voices start to disappear over time if there isn't a space held for them. So you really have to consider, what aren't people sharing if I'm always finishing, the thoughts for them? What am I preventing them from sharing by immediately jumping into my ideas? So one of the first things someone might say to me, especially if they're high dominance and we're talking about personality traits and communication styles, they might say that I can't control it. I have to jump in. I have to be making forward progress. There's nothing I can do. This is the way I've always been. And I have to say, it is something you can learn and train yourself to do over time. You can train restraint as a leadership skill. It doesn't have to be considered a personality trait and one that can never be changed for you. So it's not about being silent. A lot of times we have this all or nothing mindset. So we might think, okay, well, if I can't say what I want because my team's going to be dependent on me, then I'm not going to say anything at all. Well, it's not silence. Silence isn't the solution. It's about the timing of sharing your ideas. So really being thoughtful about, when is the right time for my team? I know my people better than anyone else knows them. What do they need? What are their communication needs? What do they need to feel heard and valued? Am I truly listening, or am I listening to then ultimately provide my solution anyway? Am I empowering them to bring ideas to the table, be creative and innovative, and then let them try things, let them make mistakes, and be okay with that during this time where we transition from me always being the decision maker to others starting to have the confidence to make decisions? Because then again, you have to wonder, are they not going to share their idea because they think that it's not necessarily what the leader was thinking, so I just shouldn't share it? Or out of fear of, if I share it and they don't agree with it, what's the consequence? Or are they going to think less of me? They're going to respect me less. They're not going to trust me. you have to be able to show that you're gaining trust and others thinking, and that you can handle ambiguity for a little bit longer and let people see how things play out themselves sometimes. So it has to be an active leadership choice. It's not a passive one. You have to go into the conversation knowing my nature is to immediately provide a solution and give direction and get started. But in this situation, I'm going to practice restraint. I am going to really focus on making sure my team gets to share their ideas and let them create a plan. Let them execute that plan and see how it works out, and then have reflective conversations with them about how it went, rather than immediately being critical and telling them all the reasons why it's not going to work. And I say that knowing that that's a challenge for me too, because I will pick holes in ideas right away, rather than giving it time to play out and see what happens. I can immediately see all the problems with it. So I know that that's something that I have to continue working on as well. So if you are able to not rush to, close the conversation and share your ideas, your team is going to start to take more ownership. Better ideas are going to come to the surface. We all have blind spots. We all have things that we're not thinking of. Matt and I were just talking about this earlier today for Tri-State Leadership Summit ideas. He said, we need a team of people that I can be bouncing ideas off of, because he is an external processor and likes to share his ideas and bounce them off of people. I just truly don't feel like I'm a creative person. I'm more of the execution piece of it, and I'm happy doing that. And so I'm not the best person for him to always brainstorm with, especially with what I said about like immediately poking holes in it. Sometimes that's helpful and sometimes it is not. But better ideas surface when you allow that team to kind of soundboard off of one another. And people learn to think on their own and not just wait for someone else's solution. I have to admit that there were times, because I was much higher S back in the day and I was more of a peacemaker, where I would sit back and I would just listen to everybody else's ideas, and I would learn to think, but I really was just waiting on someone else to make a decision, and then I was going to nod and smile and go with the flow and be happy with it. And I wouldn't really step up and share my ideas, even if I totally disagreed with them. I would just wait for someone else to make a decision. So not as much thinking as I might do now. But you want to create that safe place for people to share ideas, and you start to get insight into, how your teammates think, what drives their decisions, how are they processing information, not just what do they feel like they need to say in order to please you or for it to align with your vision. So this is happening all the time. It's in informal meetings. It's in a coaching conversation with someone. It is in any sort of decision that needs to be made. You can be intentional about holding back and not immediately providing that direction. Of course, there are times when you should have the last word, and it's probably common sense as to when that should be, but those times where it's a safety concern. If something's happening and it's unsafe, someone could get hurt, the company could get sued, there's some sort of liability associated, you're going to want to be decisive, take quick action, and just based on your expertise, be able to share what to do right away. You're not going to want to hem and haw and take your time and let's think this through. You're probably going to want to take action right away if someone's safety is involved. If it has to do with the values of the company, if it is obviously something that There's a clear direction that's either in alignment with the values of the company or appropriate behaviors within the company, okay, you're probably going to want to guide that. Or a very clear organizational decision that impacts the entire vision for the future of the organization. There's a certain level of buy-in you're going to want to have in that, but sometimes it just has to be someone making that ultimate decision. So there are times when having clarity is being kind, and people are looking to you for that, and they just want you to have that direction for them. So it's not that you should avoid having the last word, it's that you should be intentional about when you have it. So what are some things that you can do instead of jumping right in right away? Some things that might be more effective than having the last word. So number one thing goes along with practicing self-regulation. Every single person that we do an emotional intelligence assessment on that needs to practice self-regulation, the first thing we talk about is pausing before responding. Actually pausing, processing the information, having listened to understand it, and then respond, rather than knowing what you want to say and immediately jumping in and saying it. So just that pause, actively pausing and thinking before responding is going to be helpful. Sometimes it can be really helpful to ask great questions. Instead of offering an answer and a solution, how about asking questions that help guide the group to find solutions? So this goes back to what we've talked about with coaching conversations in general. Coaches ask good questions to get people to come up with solutions that make sense for them. It's the same kind of thing. When you go to open your mouth, what would it look like to ask a question rather than make a statement? Making sure you're letting others finish their thoughts, even prompting, is there anything else you would like to share? Tell me more about that, would be helpful in kind of pulling out that information from others, especially if they're not used to you doing it. It might take some time and some prompting because it's not your typical behavior, not predictable for you. So they're trying to figure out how to navigate this change. Naming what you're hearing instead of concluding what you're hearing. So that's clarifying understanding. I think what I hear you saying is, or I think the idea you're sharing is, and making sure that you're on the same page and you're following their thought process, but it's also showing that you are thoughtfully listening to understand just by clarifying understanding. And then paying careful attention to who hasn't spoken, who hasn't given their feedback in the discussion, and why are they withholding their thoughts? Is it because they truly don't have any ideas yet? They're unsure of the situation. You've not given them this opportunity before. They didn't have enough wait time because they didn't know you were discussing this today. Well, what is the reason? Who has not spoken? And how can you, within reason, allowing them to be comfortable and it feel like a safe place, give them the opportunity to speak. So it might feel a little uncomfortable at first because all of these things that I'm sharing are slowing you down. So especially for a highly dominant person, it feels like it's slowing down the process. But it's very rewarding when the team starts to now be creative and innovative and they are coming up with the solutions and making decisions on their own, and you do not have to be involved in everything and have the last word in everything. The reason I was thinking about this is it came up recently with a client, which is what I'm going to talk about for Leadership in the Wild. So Leadership in the Wild is this segment where I typically highlight someone that I've noticed leading well. As of recent, it seems like I can't say any of their names because they're clients and it's not appropriate to do so. So if they hear it, they know I'm talking about them, but the whole world doesn't know who I'm talking about. So I chose this episode because I was working with an individual who is extremely dominant. He really models the characteristics that I was talking about that I said earlier about being results driven, wanting to be efficient, wanting to see things very quickly, and also being frustrated that people aren't making decisions on their own. And so the individual has to be directive all the time. I loved that this individual, after having gone through the DISC process and having everyone on the team take a DISC assessment, really was open in front of the group about their own opportunities for growth, acknowledging that we're not just doing this because I want you guys to see what you can gain from it, but I also know that what I'm doing isn't working and I need to make changes. And this person was very open to the exact strategies and things that I'm sharing with you in this episode, really shifting the way that meetings occur and allowing people to speak first and share their thoughts. And then, when prompted, you weigh in at the end, or just let them run with it and let them make mistakes and let the process be a little bit slower. So slow down now to be able to speed up later. And I have to say that this person, though I know it was very hard and isn't how they're naturally wired to be, was not only willing behind the scenes to talk about the changes that they would make, but also voiced it in front of their entire team, being able to share, I'm going to really work on this because I know that the way that I'm leading is not working. So I just wanted to acknowledge that it's a very vulnerable thing to do, but very powerful. And now think about the shift that can take place in that team, as they know everybody's working toward a common goal, and that this person wants what's best for the team and is not saying, I want to change you guys and who you are, but I am perfect and get to remain the same and have no need to change. That's not how it came across at all. So what a cool opportunity to see that. And I just wanted to highlight that. And that is what led to the topic for this week. So hopefully, based off of that situation, you were able to gain something out of it as well. So my branching out challenge is I definitely want people to resist the urge to immediately jump in and share their ideas. In the next conversation you have, in the next meeting that you have, if you have this tendency to jump in and give directives, or not be a great listener, not pause before responding, see what happens when you leave open space and you ask questions instead. Try that. I'd love to hear how it goes for you, how people respond to it, and what results you might see right away. But I feel like we can all improve a little bit in this area sometimes, especially with the listening before responding. So I hope that this episode has been helpful. Remember, the leadership strength isn't about dominance. It's not about volume and speed at which you're getting results, but it's really about being able to step back and let people come to the table with ideas, empower them, build that trust and that relationship, and create room for others to rise to the occasion and learn to be effective as leaders as well. So that brings this episode to a close. I hope that you will share this with someone in your network. Don't share it just because there's someone that is very dominant and gives directives. This isn't an opportunity to say, hey, you stink and you should really listen to this episode because you need to improve in this area. That's probably not the best strategy. But share it with somebody that you think might find value. Share it with your team. Use these episodes as an opportunity to reflect. I know some of my listeners have shared specific episodes with their team and asked them all to listen in and then discussed it together. So that's a cool opportunity too. So if you find one that, really sounds like something your team could benefit from, I encourage you to do that. Be sure to subscribe so you're getting the notifications every Friday Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time, and you have the opportunity to listen in and also share feedback on how these things are helping you. I almost closed out this episode without doing the Leadership Unscripted, which is terrible. But I will knock it out real quick because I feel like I already did. This has happened a lot lately, where the challenge that's submitted is really in alignment with the topic in the episode. I've been kind of going through them and trying to match them up in a way that makes sense. So for those of you that haven't heard this before, these are listener submissions of questions that they have, so that myself and a guest can kind of talk through how we might handle these scenarios. So this one's short and simple. I'm in a leadership role without formal authority, more influence than it is power. How can I lead effectively when I can't make the final decisions? So I'm curious for listeners to think through what I just shared in this episode and see if you can answer this on your own. My mind immediately goes to kind of redefining what leadership actually is. It's more influence than power anyway. So it's that formal authority that you're talking about. To me, that doesn't really matter as much. Many of the most impactful leaders shape outcomes without ever having the final say. Because if people, listen to you, trust you, seek your input, you're already leading whether you have authority or not. So keep that in mind. I think that when you are not the decision maker, the question here is, how can I lead effectively when I can't make the final decisions? There's so many other things that you can do to lead effectively. I always think about modeling the behaviors that you want to see, following up consistently on your commitments, showing consistency in everything you do so people know what to expect from you. Doing excellent work consistently, being steady, not being reactive, all of those common leadership behaviors. It doesn't have to come down to decision making. And then I think about what I just shared in the episode too, about asking better questions. So even if you're not the decision maker, could you be asking questions that help guide the conversation and help others think clearly? Like, what problem are we really trying to solve here? Or, what would success look like, 6 weeks from now? What could we be overlooking? Asking good questions can add just as much value to the conversation without you having to be the decision maker. And then showing how the ideas tie back to and are in alignment with the shared goals of the team, of the organization, being able to connect the dots for people. All of these things are allowing you to have great influence and lead effectively without making decisions at all. So hopefully this episode helped answer that question in itself, but maybe those additional thoughts helped as well. So anyway, I know I tried to wrap up this episode once without doing this. To be completely honest, I am out of practice in my recordings because I was taking some time off and doubling up on recordings, and I almost forgot an entire segment. So this is what happens when you're out of practice. As I was going back to, if you do want to submit a challenge you're facing or an idea for a podcast episode, always feel free to shoot us an email at info@branchingoutpodcast.com. Or if you'd like to be a guest in an episode in 2026, we'd love to hear from you. We're getting that schedule all knocked out, so let us know. You can fill out a guest application online at branchingoutpodcast.com. All right, well, until next time, keep branching out.